I forgot to upload this yesterday, so you're probably getting two of these today. Hello and welcome back to Thoughts Per Episode Classic Doctor Who Edition. Today we are talking about the episode The Web Planet. I remember the name of it. I don't even need to look at my notes. I remember the name of the episode I just watched. I'm that good at this. So good at this that I'm still calling serials episodes. Just a quick note before we start. I am going to be changing up the way that I do these just a little bit. Previously, I was recording segments after watching every single episode, and in the previous fourth episode, Classic Doctor Who, I even was taking audio clips from the episode and interweaving them into the episode, which is a really cool thing to do for someone who has more time on their hands than I do. As it is, for me, I ultimately found that I just wanted to be able to watch and enjoy the episodes and was getting too mired in the whole minutiae of making a video about it, and ultimately this isn't my job. I do this for fun, so hopefully you don't mind, but I'm going to be talking about it more generally. I actually think this isn't purely like a just for me kind of a change. I also think that this might be better for the video because I don't think anyone else was doing it the way I was doing it. The whole like watch an episode, stop, talk about it, watch the next episode, stop, talk about it. It's good for talking about all of the tiny details, but it does mean that I don't tend to talk about the story as a whole. That being said, don't worry, I took copious amounts of notes for this, so hopefully I won't be missing any of the smaller details that I want to talk about either. At kind of a top level then, The Web Planet is a serial where the Doctor and co land on the planet Vortis. The planet's atmosphere is barely hospitable enough to be breathed without the use of a special suit, and those suits were really interesting because they weren't like typical space suits with like the space helmets on and everything. It was literally like open air. They just kind of had like these little air things poking out of a chest, I assume just like blaring oxygen up into their faces, which I feel like is probably very inefficient. I'm not surprised that the Doctor eventually would swap to the more traditional looking orange jumpsuit spacesuit thing that they wear quite a lot in the modern series. Instead of normal drinkable water, the water is quite acidic, which I feel like is a recurring theme currently through Classic Who. Someone going to like wash their face in a nice little pool of clean looking water and then being stopped just in time by the Doctor, who's like, no, that pool is acidic or whatever. He dropped Ian's tie in it, and Ian was very upset about losing his Coal Hill school tie. Now, the Web Planet is home not to the internet, but to not one, not two, but three separate factions of bug people. Firstly, we have the Zarbi, made up of giant ants and these weird shell bug things with long noses, which I will be referring to as shell bugs. There's probably a more specific type of bug that they're actually modelled after, but I'm not a bug expert. Faction 2 are called the Menoptera, and they are bee people. They are bees. And then you've got Faction 3, the Optera, which are these kind of woodlouse looking dudes that hop around and they live underground. As the serial goes on, we learn that the Optera are actually descendants of the Menoptera, and the Menoptera had to flee their home after the Zarbi, the ant people if you're keeping up, were corrupted by the use of something called an animus and a kind of like spider parasite at the center of it. I find the bugs in this serial really endearing. Like, firstly, you've got to be ready for some bleeps and bloops. They decided to portray the ants communicating with each other telepathically for a series of bloop 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 bloop. It is incessant, and I can see it being annoying, but I really enjoyed it. The entire thing was so endearing, and you know what? The costumes were actually pretty cool. Like, they probably wouldn't hold up by today's standards, but by 1960s standards, behind this weird bleary camera, one of the cameras as well, by the way, I think there was something going on with it, either that or the film got damaged a bit or something, but like there's this kind of like smudge mark across some of it. Who knows, maybe that was a directorial decision to highlight the alien feeling of the landscape. I don't know. Anyway, this is classic era Doctor Who, so we begin with the party separating, which they should never do, and then some people getting captured, which they should never do. Barbara gets captured by the Menoptera, who want to kill her for knowing too much. Then Ian gets captured by a different Menoptera. So Barbara has a bee man, and Ian has a bee lady, and that's how I remember the different Menoptera characters. We've got Bee Man. They do have names, by the way. I just could not keep track of them. We had B-Man and B-Lady. I'm not going to go into like the minutiae of all the details of the plot changing, because I don't think I necessarily have too much to say about it. What I do have to say is you can very much see the pattern of a lot of classic Who stories in this one, where it feels like what happens a lot is they split the party up and they have different factions, and a lot of the second half of the serial is usually about leading one faction into battle against another. I feel like there's something almost proto-Cybermen-ish about the idea of Wasabi being corrupted by this creature with the use of the animus to force them into doing things that they don't want to do. Like, there's even the use of gold to, like, control people, so it's not like gold is a weakness, but the idea of gold having an effect and then being used against the possessed Zabi is definitely a thing. And yeah, I just feel like there's some proto-Cyberman DNA in this story. Ian spends most of his story underground discovering the Optera, and then, like, you know, helping the Menoptera and the Optera to come to peace, because at first the Optera are like, you're from the sky, you're evil, and the Menoptera are like, no, we're you, we just had to escape to other planets because this one was rendered inhospitable. But they spend most of their time down underground in the tunnels, and then they just kind of pop up at the end when all the characters kind of come together at the centre of, I guess, the Queen's Lair, or whatever you want to call it. It has a name. I did not pick up on the name. By the end point in the story, the Doctor and Vicky have been captured and are helpless. Barbara has led an assault of the Menoptera on the Zabi in the centre of the web, and fails, and then Ian pops up and helps finish the job. He literally just pops up out of the ground. I like that Barbara ends up kind of helping draw up battle plans, because this is definitely a time when women had a role, you know? This is 1965. This is a time when women were still very much seen to not be militaristic in any way. Or I guess I should say not have the opportunity to be militaristic, not have the opportunity to fulfill a role outside of the usual norms. At least that's my understanding. I wasn't fucking there. So it was pretty cool to see Barbara fulfill that role. She continues to be one of my favourite characters in this era of Doctor Who. Maybe my favourite. You know what? Yeah, fuck it. Barbara's my favourite character in the first 2 seasons of Doctor Who. She's just S tier, dude. She gets shit done. She handles herself. She figures shit out. She's on top of things. She adapts to situations. We will now take to my notes and see some more specific things that I may have forgot to talk about. Oh, so in episode 2 of this serial, when Ian and the Doctor have to go and find the TARDIS, which has disappeared, the cliffhanger at the end of episode 1 was this big mysterious thing of like, my TARDIS, it's gone, you know, and like they're stranded on this planet with barely breathable atmosphere, and I think it's the first time in Doctor Who when the TARDIS gets stolen. I can't think of an earlier episode, but maybe I'm missing an obvious one. But you assume there's some like sci-fi tech being used here to steal the TARDIS away, and then it pans over and you just see a bunch of ants, giant ants just fucking pulling the TARDIS away. Oh my god, it made me laugh so much. The Doctor mentions he has never seen a planet as strange as this in his life, which is interesting because what's the Doctor seen in his life at this point so far? This is still pretty early for us, but he's still like 200 or something, right? Planet of giant bugs. I guess now he's seen everything. Might as well end the show here. Speaking of Barbara being S tier, I did appreciate how in episode 2 she did escape, because the Menoptera, by the way, are not initially portrayed as friendly. They just see Barbara as someone who could potentially lead Wasabi to them, so they must kill her, I think, as one says, quite dramatically, and then she escapes and then gets captured by Wasabi and leads them to the Menoptera. So way to go, Barbara. It's fine, you're still an S tier character. Everyone makes a few mistakes, it's fine, don't worry. At one point the Doctor realizes that he's on planet Vortis, but says that he didn't recognize it at first because it's not supposed to have moons. And I thought that was really interesting, and I thought they might do a cool time travel thing wherein, like, he's actually earlier in the planet's history and something happens to the moons over the course of this story. But actually I was completely wrong. The moons are drawn to Vortis because of the magnetism of the animus or something. I don't remember, I'm so sorry. People are going to leave comments saying, you fool, how could you not remember this very obvious specific detail? Listen, I was taking copious amounts of notes and I still missed some shit which should should be pretty obvious. If you'll allow me some leeway, I do not think it is entirely obvious what is happening on screen at all times in 1965. Oh, I did say that it was weird that the TARDIS translation matrix did not extend to Vizabi, who, you know, communicate through bleeps and bloops. If this is Vortis, what do you know of its history? History doesn't mean anything when you travel in space and time. Thanks, Doctor, that's really helpful. Oh, when I first realised that the main antagonist of his story would be an arachnid of some variety, I was wondering if it was going to be the Arachnos. I don't know if Arachnos is a classic Who monster or if it showed up in New Who to begin with, but having not known this, I was like, hey, maybe this is the first time we hear of Arachnos, but no, this is not Arachnos. Maybe they could retcon this into being Arachnos if they wanted to, but I doubt it. I mean, I don't remember much about the Arachnos, but wasn't its whole, its whole thing, like, eating planets and, like, conquering civilizations and stuff? Isn't that what this parasitical spider entity was doing here? It's fine, I've only watched through Doctor Who 4 or 5 times in my life. It's not like I should know anything about it by now. You must never unplug the time and relative dimension link, which is just a radio, really, isn't it? If you are gasping for some context, I apologise. This is when the Doctor has been taken captive by the spider thing, and it's forcing him to find out where the Menoptera are. Oh, at one point there's a scene where a bunch of giant ants are running through the maze, and one of the giant ants knocks a camera, and I just found that so endearing. I love the giant ants, by the way. I fucking love them so much. They are adorable. I know they were probably horrifying. I can see them being horrifying to a smaller child watching this on a small set-top box, black and white, back in the 60s. I can see it being horrifying and terrifying. But where I'm sat here, obviously with like a better screen and a better understanding of visual effects, like, it's just adorable. These giant ant costumes just like stomping around the set. Oh my god, I just want to hug them. Vicky feels the same way later on when they capture one. She calls it Zombo, which is a little bit dark, but she's talking about how cute it is. I'm like, yeah, Vicky, you get me. You get me. You're my representation in this drama right now. Oh, the ants tearing off the bee people's wings so that they can't escape the crater of needles. Oof. Oof. That sounds painful. And that's like really horrific imagery. I like how this is my notes for episode 3, and I've just got written down, also, the bee people of a Menoptera. I finally caught up. One of my notes is just, the Carzinome. What's the Carzinome, you might ask? No clue. Ask Christian of 3 evenings ago when I was watching this at 2 AM. I think it's probably like the centre of the web where the spider is, but, you know, I don't know. By the time of the 4th episode, I was writing down that there is a real sense of a grander war going on. Like, obviously, this is very much aged poorly in some respects in terms of, like, narrative pacing, and, you know, visuals and stuff. But, you know, I believe it. I believe that there is a grander war between these bee people and these giant ants happening. 60 years later, or I guess 58 years later, and it's still working out. Violent scenes. The Menoptera and Barbara against Vizabi. One ant is stabbed and a shellbug is crushed against a wall. Barbara is horrified. Welcome to the horrors of war, Barbara. I hope you're still enjoying your cheerful jaunt through time and space. Honestly, like, with these older episodes, there are so many times when I'm like, why do you enjoy this? It feels like every time you land, you get caught up in a situation which is deeply traumatic. I did like the introduction, by the way, of the Optera as, like, you know, the little underground woodlice people and, like, the little kingdom they've made. It was very Hollow Knight before Hollow Knight. And how they worship the Menoptera as gods, and then they're like, no, we're your ancestors, dude. It might not be the most original sounding concept in science fiction, but also this was 1965, so it could have been pretty original back then. I just like the idea of a species where some of them go underground and hide and evolve into the Optera, and some of them escape to the stars and become the Menoptera, and then they meet again later and work together to overthrow their aggressors. It's just cool. It's just cool. You know, sometimes things can be kind of basic like that and they're pretty cool. I wrote that the bees flying are quite good. Honestly, for 1965, the bees flying around, like jumping and taking off and flying, they're pretty good. It's pretty believable, actually. Like, I know they're probably just on wires or something, but, like, I fully believe this transition state between, like, bee form and humanoid form is happening. And they don't skimp out on it. It happens a fair few times during some of these action scenes. So, Bee-Man. You might remember Bee-Man, Barbara's companion. He's one of the ones who got his wings ripped off, right? He has this great speech about using brains instead of wings, and that losing wings isn't the same as losing hope. Their two options are to risk everything to assault Wasabi, or like try to survive and risk everything by trying to survive in a hostile landscape. And this guy without wings basically says that, you know, both plans, action and inaction, are dangerous, but action is where hope lies, so that they should pursue hope and action and actually, you know, doing something against their aggressors. And I don't know, man. I know it was a man in a bee suit in 1965 in a family sci-fi show talking about this stuff, but I thought it was pretty cool. That was a nice little speech. I totally butchered the retelling of it, but this is all on iPlayer if you want to go see it yourself. Meanwhile, underground, Ian is still trying to escape with B-Girl, and they're digging, and they accidentally open up a stream of some acidic water, and they block it, or the little woodlice girl who mind it open blocks it by shoving her head into the hole and being burned alive. Good God. Remember when I said this was a show full of family? Sheesh, what a way to go. What a brutal sacrifice to make. And they're just like, yeah, we do this. This is what happens sometimes, but we gotta keep going. It's like, damn, you guys live a difficult life. I'm really feeling the plight of these bugs. This was truly a bug's life. The Doctor's Ring. What's going on with that? We recently watched a season 1 episode where the ring comes up. In the Reign of Terror, the Doctor trades his ring for some parchment so that he can forge his own, you know, this is pre-psychic paper, he can forge his own papers. And then presumably he gets it back later because he keeps wearing it. But, like, what's going on with that? Because his ring is used here for something. I don't remember what. I'm sorry, I didn't follow it entirely well. And he is very reluctant to part with it. And the bee guy, sorry, the Menoptera that he's giving it to is like, can I ask about its secrets? And he's like, you may not. And it's just interesting that it's been brought up again. There's got to be something to do with this ring. Like, is it of Gallifreyan origin? Is it our window into the Doctor's past and learning that he's a Time Lord? I'd be really curious. I'm going to be really disappointed if it putters out into nothing. Please don't actually leave a comment telling me what it is. I would be interested to know if it becomes anything. If it doesn't come up again, you can let me know. But I just hope it's something cool. Anyway, that's pretty much all I had on my specifics. I mean, it's not. I cut out a lot of what I wrote down, but that's all the interesting things. I guess to give my overall thoughts on the Web Planet then, as a Doctor Who serial, I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I wasn't completely enthralled by it. There were certainly parts which dragged, which in my opinion is fairly common in these earlier episodes of Doctor Who. But I think my new method of recording notes for these videos, and taking myself away from being in kind of like an active recording scenario when watching them and just being able to watch them in my kind of free time and then talk about them later, definitely contributed to my ability to enjoy the episode. And I'm hungry for more classic Doctor Who, which is good, because I've got some more ahead of me, haven't I? I enjoyed the theme of this planet with a bunch of bugs on it, having a big war, and the TARDIS crew getting tied up in it. I thought it was pretty flavourful and pretty fun, and I'm probably gonna remember, if not the details, at least the general kind of flavour of it going forwards. A quick note before we move on, the next story that aired after the Web Planet was The Crusade, which is set during the Third Crusade. Unfortunately, 2 of the episodes are missing, and I know some people in the past have, you know, suggested that I watch like these reconstructed with images kind of versions of these episodes, but honestly I went to the wiki and read up the synopsis of this one because that's what I do for episodes that are missing. And honestly I feel like I'm not missing much. Ian gets knighted, that might be a thing in the canon moving forward. There might be a reference to, ooh, Sir Ian, but mostly, if I'm being honest, it doesn't seem like the kind of plot that would interest me that much, the kind of historical setting that would interest me that much. And yeah, I just, I'm okay. Maybe we'll go back to it one day if they fix it up or something. But for now, I think we're okay moving on to the Space Museum, which is a 4-part story. So I will see you potentially next week for that.